Welcome back to Real Conversations with Nora for my 51st episode. My topic of discussion this week is the importance of a healthy marriage. And joining me today is Dr. Harriet Roberson. Dr. Harriet Roberson is a loving wife and mother and grandmother. She is a TV radio personality, entrepreneur, inspirational, motivational speaker, founder of Great Marriages Rock Ministries, and co-founder of the WEN Network, Women's Empowerment Network. And she's what I like to call a kingdom connector.
That's
Dr.
right.
Roberson, thank you so much for accepting the invitation and being our special guest today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm so humbled and honored to be your guest on today. So thank you again.
You're so welcome. So I like to Google. I'm a Google girl. I like to Google everything and find out. Google is so full of information, And so I found something that I thought was so appropriate for our conversation today. It's called love and commitment. It takes care and love and a decision to be committed to another person or one another. It is far more than fleeting emotions as portrayed on television or the big screen or romance novels. Feelings come and go, they said, but your true decision to be committed lasts forever. And that is what helps to define the healthy marriage. So could you I look at you as the marriage. Every time I look at your show or I look at you on Instagram and Facebook, I was like, wow, she is the expert on marriages.
I don't know about an expert. Being married 40 years.
That's pretty much an expert.
Yeah.
You don't even last that long. Oh my goodness. We've been married 40-something years too. And it's like, ooh. So, So what is your thought on that statement?
Well, you know what? I always think about, marriage is a commitment. Mm-hmm. And, when we set our marriage vows, we were in front of our family and our friends, and we were all googly eyed and we looked at each other and, and we said, we vow to have and to hold, to love each other in sickness and in health, until death do us part. Rich or poor, add that in there, right?
Right.
And then life happens.
Absolutely.
And then life happens and we kind of forget our vows, And so how many of us even go back? I was even talking to my husband about it. And I was like, wow, how many times have we actually went back and talked about these vows and what they really mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of people, they go through the wedding and they're, don't really think about this is a commitment. I made a commitment to each other. And so our spouses need to know, and we need to know and commit to each other that 100% we have, no matter what we go through, we have each other's back. We are a team, it's us against the world.
Right. That is so true, isn't it?
Yeah. And we do. We have to know, even in the stages of marriage, I always laugh at, people don't realize that it is stages,
Right.
You have the honeymoon stage, you have the raising your kids and building wealth stage, everybody's busy during that time. And then you have your empty nest syndrome when the kids go off to school and you haven't sowed into your marriage and you don't know who this person is. And even if I like you anymore. Right. And then we have our retirement stage. So we just need to know that whatever stage we are in our life, that we committed 100% to each other. And we need to continue to say, I love you, continue to hold hands, continue to have date night, continue to make your marriage a priority. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where it's lacking when you see people who've been married for 20, 30 years and all of a sudden they're getting divorced. I'm like, first of all, where are you going? Are you going to start dating again? I just can't imagine that part. But I think it all goes back to the commitment. Right. And to stick it out, through thick and thin. Right. You have to be committed that this is what you decided on, and things change in life.
Right. Wouldn't you say, though, because recently, probably maybe about a month or so ago, we had a woman on, and somebody I know personally, and after 45 years of marriage, they got a divorce. Wow. And one of the things that she was saying was that, things were such that she realized that this was the final stage of her life and she didn't want that to be the end of it. And it seemed like the other person didn't seem to want to work on it. And so no intentions, to move back home to where she was from. And I guess probably about shortly after that, ran into somebody that she dated when she was in high school, and the rest is history. They got married. She got married again, but her thought was that she just didn't. Would you say, and I'm going to ask you this, would you say that there is a period in time with some people, not everybody, especially if you worked at it and worked at it and worked at it, and she said she didn't want to get, it got to the point where the person wouldn't even speak to her for weeks at a time. And she just said, you know what, this is not how I want to end my life. I'm in the final stages of my life. I want to be happy. I want to have joy. And what I said to her was that takes a lot to make that commitment, because here we go to commitment, because everybody wouldn't do it. Some people would just stick it out. They would be miserable. The person would treat them mean or whatever happens. What's your thought about that? Because there does come a time, I believe, in some marriages where, like you said, the kids went off to college and now it's just you and you're like, who is this person? And that's kind of like where she was. She worked at a corporate job where she worked for years, and then she retired. She retired, and that's when it happened. And she said she would get up sometimes and they wouldn't speak to her for about 2 or 3 weeks. And she was like, no, I can't do this. And they,
right.
So what was your thought?
Right. Well, you know what? I've been kind of looking when Bill Gates and Melinda Gates decided to divorce, and I started kind of looking into that some more. Right. And they call it gray divorces. Is what they call it. Gray divorces.
Wow.
And I've heard that. You're so right. I've heard that where people say, I'm not happy and things don't look like they're going to change. And so do I want to live the rest of my life, like that? So I think it is a personal, decision to make. And because it is true, you don't want to be unhappy.
Right.
And so that's why when I'm talking to couples, especially the younger couples, I'll talk about how important it is to, put your marriage first in front of your kids, in front of your job, everything, so into your marriage now.
Right.
Because what happens is once those kids leave, it's just you all.
Right.
And you may have built wealth or whatever. And if you haven't built your marriage, you're so far apart. And I understand. I definitely understand. And I think that's a personal decision.
Sure.
And, and I couldn't judge anybody for that, because I can imagine, how uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to go through my house and not speak to my husband. And, our whole thing at this point, we're like, okay, where do we want to eat for dinner? What do we want to eat for dinner? Where do we want to go today? What do we want to do vacations? So it's always a planning on we. And so, so we have to teach the younger ones to sow now.
Right.
Don't put their kids first. It's your marriage first. Right. And even over your ministry. I know people in ministry who have been married for a long time who are now divorcing.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing, that they put ministry ahead of their marriage. And now it's like, what? Who are you?
Right.
And I don't like you, and I don't have to impress anybody anymore.
Right. Isn't that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the other thing they said, faithfulness to one another with our bodies. It says, guard your sexuality daily and devote it entirely to your spouse. Sexual faithfulness requires self-discipline and awareness of the consequences. It says, refuse to put anything in front of your eyes, body, or heart that would compromise your faithfulness to one another. Let's talk about that, because we know that is a big thing. It happens in the church. Let's face it. Let's be real. It happens in the church. I mean, it happens because of what is in front of us, especially when we hear of, scandals. I want to say scandals. We have scandals, let's say, in the church. And because we know that people don't always come, and we'll just say women, not all women, but people don't always come with good intentions. And so things happen, things happen. And then that's when I say that we allow the devil to allow us to go astray, because we didn't keep our eyes on Jesus. But that's another whole show right there. But what is your thought on that?
Well, I do a workshop called How to Affair-Proof Your Marriage. And that is one of my favorite workshops, because everyone can relate to that. And so we talk about how the enemy knows exactly what we like. And the enemy knows how to highlight that thing.
Oh, goodness. Like he tried to do with Jesus when he said, oh, all this is yours. If you just bow down to me. And Jesus like, dude, get behind me.
Yeah, get behind me. Exactly. And so, people don't realize it's not about, when you talk about having an affair, it's not even all about sex. A lot of times it's even about just the emotional part of it, emotional affair. And so we have to be able to spot a potential affair even before it starts, and then nip it before it starts, because there is signs.
Right.
Whether it's at church, we talked about church, it's at work, sports with your kids. We have to watch at all times. You really have to guard your marriage. You need to walk around with a big shield.
Right.
I'm guarding my marriage. I'm guarding my heart from allowing it to be open to anybody else. So a few things that I did jot down that we do need to watch is personal conversations that we have with the opposite sex. And sometimes, even these days, we have to watch it with the same sex.
Right. Okay.
Those personal conversations. I had a married lady tell me that she looked forward to the UPS man coming to her job every day. And she said that she would take extra time to get dressed in the morning and do her hair and makeup because she so looked forward to him coming in, and she wanted to be cute. And she loved their conversations. And so things like that are ways that the devil can come in, the enemy can come in and to, inch its way into your marriage.
Yes.
Then it comes to, hey, let's go to lunch. Hey, let's go to dinner. Hey, those type of things. Let's exchange cell numbers. And then I also have a man who was at church, and he said the same thing, that he had a woman who was single gal or gals that would give him compliments at church. And so he purposely made sure he looked good going to church and look for that woman, at church, because he wanted that compliment. And so one thing I tell the ladies is, you be the first to compliment. And you be the first to compliment your spouse when they're going out that door. You let them know how good they look. Don't let somebody else beat you to complimenting your spouse. Right. And so that's one thing. And then the next thing is even those personal conversations. You start complaining about issues at home to that person. You start spending extra time with that person, maybe taking a break or even going to lunch or even just talking in the parking lot after work. Those are things that you need to avoid. And I remember years ago, actually, it reminded my husband about this, but when he was working, he would come home and tell me all the time about this lady who would always tell him how lucky he was to have, how lucky I was as his wife. Your wife is so lucky to have you. And she would tell him that every day, how lucky his wife was. I said, honey, don't you think you don't know what's happening? She wants you to make her feel the same way. Right. She's looking for that, and she's hoping that you're going
looking for a doorway. She was looking for him to open the doorway.
Exactly. So he said, of course, he really didn't know what was going on. So he said what he did is he started taking a different route to make sure not to pass her, not to pass where her office was, and not to run into her. And so that's how he nipped it in the bud, and so, but not knowing that that's a ploy that women know. They know how to get you. They really do. And some men know how to get you too. Right. And so, we have to just be smart. It's just a thing about being smart. I think about the song by Sherelle. Remember that song, Everything I Miss at Home? You give me attention. You're someone who understands my needs. You're someone who knows how to hold me, and the one who knows how to make me feel. Everything I miss at home. Right? Remember that song?
Yeah, but I can imagine.
But my question is, if you know that you're missing it at home, why not have a conversation with your spouse about it?
Absolutely.
And say it in love without any condemnation, without any blame or accusation. And, hey, honey, remember when we used to do this? Remember when we used to do that? And, I loved how we used to, go do play that remember game, maybe even set up a date night, a romantic night, so you can start again.
Right.
And so that's important. But the main thing is, just to know it can happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
You see it happen to other people and you're wondering how it happened. That's how it happened.
Right.
Exactly. And it can happen to you. And even things like I talk to, especially younger women about it, the counseling. Sometimes even if it's your pastor,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to be alone in no room with no one talking about your problems.
Right.
Because it's been a lot of pastors and leaders who have taken advantage of what you're going through.
Right.
And, and you're thinking it's innocent and it's pure, and they have ulterior motives.
Right.
So even with that, being able to watch, even doing counseling, make sure the door is open, make sure there's a secretary there or his wife is there.
Right.
And just, again, you have to be careful and you have to fight, everything.
Right. Right.
And if it's in your spirit, then, if you got to get some counseling, it's okay to get some counseling.
Right. And the Bible says the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And you said you talked about that. He knows his job very well. The unfortunate part is we don't recognize his accolades and understand that he has a purpose in mind, and that is to destroy it. And then you think about these situations where men seem to be a little oblivious sometimes. Oh no, that can't be what she meant. She just complimented. I tell my husband sometimes, I said, it's being naive. I said, just watch it. I know I'm a woman, and so I don't think I said, oh yes, brother. That's what
she knows.
So let's be clear that's
right over their head.
Right. It just goes right, and we are so keen to it. And so I just think that you're so right that we have to be so mindful of it. People will say to me, wow, you're beautiful. Are you married? I said, happily married with 6 children and 14 grandchildren and 1 great child. That ends that right there. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Nip it in the bud.
Happily married.
Nip it in the bud.
Right. You have to nip it in the bud. You have to. So let's just talk about this point, because I think this is really important, that how important it is to respect each other's decision. And I think about me and my husband. I always tell people the thing I love about my husband is he's never, ever told me what I could not do. And I've never told him what he could not do. We talk about it, and he said, well, if that's what you're going to do, but at least we have that conversation, we discuss it, and we have these marriages where it's almost like a dictatorship. And I just like my skin crawls when a woman says, I have to ask my husband's permission. And I just don't, this is just me. I just believe that it's something we discuss, but we're individual human beings. And I think that if the person loves you, they want to support you. If you love them, you want to support them. Because let's face it, a man never comes home and says, oh, Harry, I just want you to know I'm so excited. I'm thinking about buying a boat. He comes home and said, I just bought a boat today.
Right.
But we, it's like, we're just like, what done? So let's talk a little bit about that, because that is something that I just like, really, are you kidding me? It's a partnership. When you agree, It's a partnership, and it's where we support each other and respect each other. And that's why I always tell my girls, I said, I don't get involved in their marriages. I said, the only thing I can tell you is you don't have to compromise who you are. When you start compromising who you are, then that's when you need to look at what's going on in the situation. So
that's right.
What you thought about that?
Well, it's so important for us to respect each other's decisions and respect the fact that both of us do have different opinions.
Right.
And it's okay. God made us that way. Right. But the point is to be respectful in it.
Right.
We can agree to disagree. We may not ever come to the same agreement on something, but it's how we handle it is the most important thing. I wish I had learned that early in my marriage, that I didn't have to be the right, although I feel like I'm the right one. Everything I do is right, he's wrong, but it didn't have to be an argument about it. Right. Agree to disagree, but in a respectful manner.
Right.
And especially in front of our kids and other people, to put a united front, even if we don't agree on how it's being handled, and talk about that in private.
Right.
And, again, the whole thing is that just to be respectful of each other. It's not a dictatorship. You don't rule me. I don't rule you.
Absolutely.
And, but again, definitely to be respectful is the main thing. And again, in front of your kids, I remember my my parents used to say, one would say no, and we would go to the other one and say, could they have it? And they said, what'd your mama say? What'd your dad say? And so, and later on in life, we found out my mom, when she was complaining about my dad, he would always tell us, go ask your mom. But had already told her to say no. So we would be arguing with our mom and asking her why. And it was all because he said to say no.
Right.
But even if she didn't agree, then she knew that this is what he said.
Right.
We had to follow, what was said. And so we have to make sure our kids do know, and even family members, those boundaries with the in-laws, the outlaws, we have to, those are boundaries.
Right.
And we have to respect those boundaries. And, my son asked me recently, he said, Mom, what happens if I'm with my wife and he's not married? And so he said, I'm with my wife and I want we're together and I want you to sit in the front seat, but she wants you to sit in the back seat. What do I do? And I said, well, you respect your wife, and you can maybe let her know that I'd like for my mom to be more comfortable in the front, if you don't mind, and say it like that. But again, ultimately, you respect your wife and she respects you. And I said, but most likely, like I would always tell my mother-in-law to go ahead and sit in the front.
Right.
I always do that.
Right.
Just out of respect.
Right. Right.
But,
the next thing they talk about was patience and forgiveness, because no one is perfect. Patience and forgiveness will always be required in a marriage relationship. Successful marriage partners learn how to show unending patience, and forgiveness to their partner. They humbly admit to their own faults and do not expect perfection from their partner. They do not bring their past errors in efforts to hold their partner hostage. Let's talk about that.
That is so true. And, these are things that I wish I had learned early on. I was just, like I said, my husband and I were having a conversation because I knew I was going to be doing this today. We're going to be talking about marriages. And there's so many things that I wish I had learned early on in life, especially things like, when they would say, don't go to bed angry.
Right.
Well, I'm mad. What am I supposed to do?
That's what God told us anyway, right? He said, don't let the sun go down on your anger now.
Yeah, I'm still mad. I'm supposed to be not angry. I'm still mad. But just to immediately forgive, and not to hold grudges, because what happens when you don't forgive immediately, bitterness sets in. And when bitterness sets in, it's very hard to get over being bitter with your spouse. So it's so important to forgive and to forgive early on. Now, that doesn't mean that you're supposed to deal with abuse.
Right.
When it comes to abuse, if it comes to, even if they're constantly having affairs on, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about to keep forgiving someone.
Right.
And you, at one point you need to figure out, well, you know what, something about this doesn't add up, and maybe you need to move on, because that's not how God intended for your marriage to be.
Right.
And so, but yes, definitely to forgive often, early, and then just to have patience with that person, just to know, we don't know how a lot of people were raised,
right?
And so I always laugh at training. I said, somebody asked me, if something happened to your husband, would you remarry? I said, probably not, because I hate to have to train someone again. I've worked hard on this.
I work hard to get him where I want him to be.
Exactly. But we do have to have patience, and just everybody is not where we are. We may have started out at the same age or the same maturity level, but one person may have matured even faster. And just to know, we can't push them. We can nudge them, but we can't really push them. So just having patience, and just, again, to see a person how God sees them.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And God is loving, and He's forgiving, and He's merciful. And so, we have to add that into our lives. And those are things that I wish that I was taught early on.
Right. Absolutely. The other thing they talk about, honesty and trust. It says honesty and trust must become the foundation for everything in a successful marriage. Honesty and trust take priority and time. You can become selfless, committed, or patient in a moment, but trust always that it takes time to build to that. And it says honesty and trust is only built after weeks, months, years, and being with someone, and then saying to yourself, wow, this is it, that it's important to be honest. So they say that what you are doing or what are you saying, that will help that to become a reality. That's how I interpreted it. And so it is important to be honest and trust one another.
That's right. That's so true. And, that even means being open. I mean, they should have, if they're interested, they want your Facebook password, if they want your phone password, just be an open book.
Right.
And just to be honest. If they ask a question, be honest about it. Right. And, and that means not hiding anything, no secrets. Right. There should not be secrets in a marriage.
Right.
And I think that people, if they really learn that early on, there should be nothing you're hiding in the first place. If you have to hide your passwords and you have to take your phone into the shower with you, something is wrong. What are you hiding? Yeah. Right. So just being honest about everything. And that includes your personal life, things at work, finances.
Right.
Being honest. Stop sneaking that stuff in the house, girl.
Well, I think, when you think about it, or at least when I think about it, I mean, it's like normal to me. It's like, oh yeah, he said, well, what's the password to this? Da 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 da. Or he just goes and look for, because I'm like my mama. She kept a book with all her passwords, and I do the same thing. So he could just look through my password, because the Lord knows that's everywhere in the house. He said, if you need to string it to your neck, because I'll say, have you seen my password? So, I think it's key. It's important to be honest with each other and know that you can. And I think like what they were saying here that I love, let me go back to this. Is honesty and trust is only built after weeks, months, and years of being who you say you are and doing what you say you'll do. And it says it's important to be honest and to trust one another. So to me, what that is saying that, there should be nothing we can't discuss.
Right.
Like you said it best earlier, we can agree to disagree. And I'll just say, if he says something, I'll say, honey, I don't agree with that. I think you need to think about that. You need to pray about that.
Did you pray about that?
Yeah, pray about that. Or I have to ask myself,
did you pray about that?
Right.
That's him knowing that, she may not agree with me.
All right. So that is so true. We have to be, and when you agree that, I always tell people who have trust issues, it really goes back to God. Do you really trust God? Because I believe that when you wholeheartedly trust God, it does something to your spirit that allows you to be free and trusting other people. I would say I trust people until they show me who they are. Once you show me who you are, then that's a different story. But until then, I'm going to believe who you are until God shows me something different. And I always say he'll never let us go on the battlefield unaware. He will always make us aware of where we are going or a situation. It's just whether we paid attention to the signs that are on the journey, on the road. I call it my yellow brick road in my book. Why You're Sitting on Your Greatness. I said, it's the yellow brick road. It's right there. I'm going towards my dreams. Now there's things on this side that are distracting me and things that are on this side that are keeping me on course, on point. Where's my focus? And so I think trusting is a key factor all across the board.
Exactly. Be where you're supposed to be. It should be never that you said, I'm going to the store to whatever, and you're somewhere else.
Right.
We shouldn't have those issues. We shouldn't even be worried about that. When your spouse says they're going to the store, you're expecting them to go to the store. Right. You're not expecting them to stop off at the bar or the club or to your baby mama's house to check on the baby without her knowing about it. Exactly. And so just, being trustworthy and knowing that your spouse can trust you and just not giving them any reason not to trust. And if the trust is broken, it's best to me to get counseling.
Right, because you got to mend it.
It's hard to mend the trust once it's been broken. So, again, like I said, I'm big on counseling. I feel like God put these people here. Find a Christian counselor. Right. For the people who don't agree with it, find a Christian one. That's what God put them there to help us, in every area of our life. And it's not a weakness that you go get counseling for your marriage, but it's a necessity.
You're right. I think we as a people, Black people, have always, followed the concept, that what happens here stays here, and so we're not as open as I believe we're not as open as we need to be in terms of going to see counseling. I think women may be probably 90% more open than our men are.
Right.
Which is sad because we need it, because it's just talk. It don't mean you're crazy. It just means
right.
that sometimes you just need another person, somebody with an objective opinion to walk you through something that you don't necessarily see yourself.
Right. I have friends who actually do marriage ministry, and they still see a counselor. Wow. And they said sometimes we need a mediator.
Right. Right.
We need someone else who was looking, from the outside looking in, who can give us an honest opinion, because again, we can agree to disagree all we want, but that situation is still there.
Exactly.
And it needs to be worked out and figured out. And so, if it's causing a rift in your marriage,
right.
Yes, have just a mediator. That's what I call sometimes a counselor. Right. And, again, just to remind, you may need someone to help remind you,
right.
Of where you were at one point in the love, and, especially for leaders. Leaders give out so much.
Right.
And, and they think that, I don't need help, but yeah, you need help.
Right. And sometimes it's out of your immediate circle. I mean, sometimes it pays to have someone who doesn't really know you.
Right.
That could give that feedback.
Right.
They could be objective. Whereas sometimes, my friend might not, because she loves me and
right.
might want to be on my side, and all of that. So absolutely.
And you want your mate to feel comfortable as well.
Right.
To know that the person is not just on your side.
Exactly.
It's your friend, or right. them, and so they're going to agree with you. Mm-hmm. And so to have someone you don't know is good.
Right. And then lastly, communication. Healthy marriage partners communicate as much as possible. It is important to communicate hopes, dreams, fears, and anxiety. It is also important to discuss the changes that are taking place in their own hearts and souls, in each other, man and wife. So let's talk about that for a minute before closing.
Right. Even I love that when you talk about the communication, how it's so important, and early on, even before you get married.
Absolutely.
These couples need to talk about, is this a deal breaker? Is that what's a deal breaker in our relationship? Who's going to do this? What kind of hopes and dreams do you have? They need to talk about that ahead of time, because that person may not be for them. So right. That's before you get married.
Right.
Even after you're married, it's so important just to talk about everything, especially things that are not, that you're not happy about in your marriage. And again, that's where, affairs can come in.
Yeah.
When you're not talking about it and you're feeling sad about this and you're feeling lonely, a lot of married people are lonely in the marriage. Right. And so you need to talk about that. And the other person needs to take it without being offended.
Right.
When you're talking about it, and they need to feel that you can come to me and talk to me about anything. Nothing is off limits. We're a couple. Right. Whether we're talking about the finances, we're talking about what happens in the bedroom, we're talking about our health. We need to be open and to know that, again, this is my person. I could talk to you about anything. And if there's an issue, again, you may need to find a counselor to help you build your communication.
Right.
I have a friend who was actually, her and her husband divorced and remarried. And they
married each other.
She remarried the fellow again.
All the money they could have saved, right?
But this time around, they went through a counselor, and so they understand how to communicate, how to open up to each other, the things that were lacking before, because they always knew they loved each other,
right?
But they didn't know how to love each other. And communication is such a key. And so if you're not communicating with your spouse, you're having issues, that again, ask for help. Right. It's okay.
Right. Yeah. That's why I called you the expert.
Well, life.
I mean, it's so
Life.
true. Communication. I call it effective communication, because you have to effectively communicate. Because I tell my husband all the time, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Right.
And people don't know that. You can say that. And when people say, this is another thing, well, Dr. Roberson, I just like to give you my constructive criticism. Well, no, you can't give me your constructive criticism, but you can give me your feedback that may enlighten me to see my situation different, because there's no place in the Bible where God says he's gonna constructively criticize you. He said, no, I shall instruct you and teach you and show you the way that you should go. I don't know, somebody said that, came along with that statement, and everybody in the world says it, but the first thing you hear, especially in a marriage, you hear criticism. You don't hear anything else. You don't hear nothing.
Right.
It's constructive. You hear criticism. And so it's important that we communicate effectively. And when I leave your presence as my husband or as my friend, I feel a lot better.
That is so true. That is so true. And, another thing I found, Nora, is, we have to have the right time to do it.
Yeah.
Our timing is off. And I went through that coming up. I had to learn that if I was mad about something, I could not wait for this man to get home from work, and I was going to let him have it. And what I found out is he would tune me out. He didn't hear what I had to say. Right. He would tune me out. He was trying to get in from work, and I'm, complaining about whatever. So what I found is, okay, let him get on in the house. Maybe let him have his dinner. Let him open up his mail and chill out or whatever, and then have a conversation. Yes. Because by then, most likely I've cooled off, and he doesn't even know what's going to hit him in the first place. Right. Let him come in and get chilled out, and then approach it in love. And most likely it's going to be received better, because most likely you're coming at him in a more of a loving way. Right. You're not coming at them, with the big issue. So, timing is everything.
Exactly.
And so again, knowing when to do it. You have people who come home and they sit in their yard. I mean, they're sitting there in their car because they know they're going to get in the house and it's going to be something. Right. Wow. She going to have something to say. He going to have something to say. I don't really feel like hearing it, especially if they know they're in the doghouse.
Right.
But if we take the time to have a time to set aside to talk about that issue or whatever, I think that it comes out much better and it's more received.
Right. Well, Dr. Roberson, I want to thank you for being my guest on Real Conversations with Nora. Are there any last minute comments that you'd like to share with the audience before leaving today?
Well, I just want to say that we have to remember that the enemy does not want our marriage to thrive. Mm-hmm. He does not want anyone to see us as an example. He doesn't want, us to be happy in life. And he knows that if he can attack us in our marriage, it's going to filter to every area of our life. It's going to filter to our kids, on how our kids are raised. It's going to filter on our ministries and even in our careers. Right. So we have to know that we have to fight with all our might, to keep our marriages, to keep them healthy. Read some stuff. There's so many books out. I mean, get you a self-help book on anything you're dealing with. If it's communication, if it's finances, if it's sex, if you're having issues with anything, then there's self-help books out there. You can Amazon or Google. You know how much we love our Google. I laughed when you said it. But yeah, Google it. It is so many resources out there that can help us. And if you need counseling, get counseling. But a lot of times you could do a self-help, a 30-day to a great marriage. Right. And follow it. Some great advice, and again, stop being around people who talk ugly about marriage. Right. Talk ugly about their spouses. I don't want to hear about your spouse. I don't want to hear about anything ugly unless he's knocking you upside the head. I'm going to let him let you know that you need to, handle that. But for the most part, I'm not your garbage can. Right. So I don't want to hear, about your spouse. So we need to, husbands and wives need to stop hanging around people who put down their marriages. Right. That's not healthy. Be around people who have great marriages. Right. Be around people whose marriage you want to be like. Right. And then lastly, stop comparing yourself. Absolutely. Stop comparing your marriage. I had somebody tell me that comparison steals your joy. You're looking at that person's marriage and you're saying, oh, I wish that my husband did this. But your husband may do things that that person is looking at like, I wish my husband did that.
Right.
You know? So
Right.
stop comparing yourself. A lot of times you're comparing yourself to people who have a jacked up marriage, but just know how they know how to keep it, a beautiful front. So again, work on your own grass, because like Joyce Meyer say, the grass may not be greener, it's just more to cut.
Well, they say those who compare themselves to others you'll always come up short. So
absolutely.
I do it. Now, how can they share with the audience how they can follow you on social media, what you're doing? You're doing some great and amazing things. Share with them how they can follow you.
Oh, sure. They can follow me on all social media at Harriet Roberson. Very simple. On Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. On Facebook, I have several pages. I have the Dr. Harriet Roberson page. I have the Great Marriages Rock page, which is amazing. We have people from all around the world who share inspiration and stories. We love that. Also the WIN Network, which is Women's Empowerment Network, helping women soar. And there's so many different ways you can reach me. Also, my TV show is called Conversations with Dr. Harriet. I'm on every Tuesday and at 7, and we're on Saturdays at 12. And it's on the Power Network, www.powernetwork.tv. And you can just go to my website, www.harrietroberson.com, and it talks about everything. Also, my women's chit chat. Every first Monday, we have a ladies chit chat, which we're going to be getting Nora to be one of our guest speakers. Actually, she doesn't know this yet, but she's going to be a guest speaker on that as well as on my TV show.
Thank you.
So you make sure to look for that as well. But thank you so much for this opportunity. This was so
wonderful having you.
I have a passion for marriages, and I just know that, no matter what it looks like now, it does get sweeter and sweeter as the years go by, but you have to work on it and you have to let it happen and ask God to help you even.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you 100%. It is work. It is work. Put on your sweatsuit because it's work. It's work. It's work. But you know what? The results at the end are so beautiful, like you said. But once again, I want to thank you for your insight. It was amazing on today's topic. And to my Real Conversation with Nora audience, please follow us on social media, on Instagram at BWOTMFG, and on Facebook at Business Women on the Move for God. Visit our website, my website, at BWOTMFG.com, and sign up for our new programs. And make sure you stop by our retail store where you'll find lots of great items, not only for you, your family, and friends. And ask your friends to watch the show each week and share it with others. I look forward to seeing you next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Real Conversations with Nora. Have a blessed and prosperous week. God bless you.
Bye.